Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Average Australian Podcast. This is episode 6. We are back once again as we look towards the upcoming PlayStation VR launch. There will be a bunch of discussion about all the games, news, and impressions from arguably one of the biggest shifts in gaming history. With all that said, Edin, how are you?
Good, man. Doing good. How are you?
I am pretty good. Just a quick thing. Do you actually agree with me about it being the biggest change in gaming? Because we've obviously had a lot of changes over the years, went from, joystick to D-pad, and then the transition to the twin dual analog sticks. We saw how analog changed how we move around in games, how we interact with the camera, and all of that. Then you look at like sort of with the touchpad with the Wii U or touchscreens in general with mobile gaming. There's been a lot of changes. But to me, VR seems to be a completely new way to play video games. Your head is essentially replacing the right analog stick in many ways. It opens up entirely new possibilities. And what we're seeing right now is like only the beginning of that. And I think people are being oblivious when they say that this is going to be a fad. Like maybe the PlayStation VR doesn't succeed. I think it will personally, but even if it doesn't, VR ultimately will succeed. And even though I think in 15 to 20 years we will still be sitting in front of a television playing a video game, with a controller, but for a fully immersive experience, that's going to happen in virtual reality. You just can't transition like being on a controller, looking at a television screen, to being inside the actual game. And I think people are ignorant of that. That limit is just going to be the games. Also, its application is going to, extend to most parts of our lives eventually. So to me, it's a real deal. But what do you think about it being like one of the biggest changes in gaming for like a long, long time?
I'm on the other end. I'm definitely, I'm definitely a skeptic on that. I think you're right. Eventually it will get there. Like you said, this is just the beginning. Probably when you look at it now, the business application side of things is where it looks like it'll probably have more legs. Like you said, virtual reality tours of, homes or offices for rent or for sale, or, those kind of things, or for, engineers and architects and all that sort of stuff. And, maybe, who knows, virtual tourism and all this, like, who knows, that side of things. I think you're right. Eventually going down the years, it will become a part of business and society and all that sort of stuff. For the time being, the games, I'm still just not 100% sold on it.
The technology itself, like the way that it immerses you into the video game, obviously the games need to improve and catch up to the technology, but from a pure player point of view, like the way that you interact with the game is just completely different.
Well, like you said, it is, except like you also said, the experiences aren't there yet. So we don't know the full capability of it yet. So I think until someone can find that killer app and find a way to really sort of bring you into it, the same thing sort of happened when the Wii came out, with the Wii, oh my God, this is the future. Now look, I'm playing tennis as if I'm actually playing tennis. I'm playing golf and I'm swinging it like a golf club and all that sort of stuff. And then once people actually realize, it's not really one-to-one movement. And it doesn't really matter how I swing. Yeah, and then it didn't really matter how you when you're playing like tennis. It didn't matter how you didn't have to technically precisely swing the racket the correct way or whatever. As long as you kind of made a broad move in that direction, it kind of counted. And after a while, the fad kind of died off. And I think that's where VR's heading for the initial launch. Like I said, I mean, from everywhere I'm looking online, it just looks like Oculus and the Vive just dropped off the face of the planet. Last I heard, they were looking at 500,000 combined sales in the US, which it's pretty poor.
It's low,
It's low, and then you've got the whole sort of chicken and the egg scenario. Well, no one's going to make games for a platform that doesn't have the numbers, but no one's going to invest in the platform when there's no games and all that sort of stuff.
That's where Sony's probably better focus, isn't it? Because like it has the demographic already picked.
They're better positioned, but from some of the initial reports that I've been hearing, the PSVR is not on the level of the Oculus, or definitely not on the level of the Vive. The HTC Vive or Vive or whatever you call it, that's the sort of golden, the holy grail of VR at this stage. And the PSVR is certainly, by all accounts, from what I'm seeing, it's not on that level.
I don't think it's going to be graphics or technical capability that's going to make VR succeed, though. Like, people need to get sold on the idea for developers to invest. So I think like the VR can still do that, no matter if it's like technically inferior to the competition.
Well, I think the technical aspect does matter to an extent, because from what I saw, like people who, like I watched the Giant Bomb video stream of the PSVR, and they sort of did like a big stream when the Oculus launched, and then they did like a big stream of the HTC. And then they did a big stream of the PSVR, and those are guys that have played VR now for many, many hours across all three. And I saw a couple of times there, like in Batman, they had to like stop because they looked like they were going to be sick. And I think a little bit of that and that can be a technical thing, because from what I understand, if the frame rate dips or there are technical glitches, I think another report I heard was on one of the other games, there was just sort of graphical glitches where like the world was kind of moving and wobbling around and stuff, and it was giving people nausea and sickness and stuff like that. So you need the technical stuff to be right, because if there's glitches and lag also and frame rate and things like that, it does make people sick, and it kind of breaks the immersion also.
I've heard the guys from Kind of Funny Games, they like say that sort of sickness, you get used to the movement. But like people are saying that you get more sick watching a person play than you do with the actual headset on, because like the person with the headset on is like know where they're moving. Obviously, they're like more switched on to what they're doing.
That's right. And like you said, probably the first time you put the helmet on or whatever, it would take you a while to get used to it. But that's what I'm saying with the PSVR. These are guys who are used to it because they've played VR for a long time now, and for them to still get sick specifically on the PSVR, I think there was a few maybe performance-related issues that caused that. And some of the other accounts I heard of sort of the PSVR is that, there's a few little gotchas there and stuff that makes it not quite on the level of the HTC, and we can probably discuss that in a little bit more detail. But just going back to your point, is it revolutionary? I think it might be, It will be, but not now. And I think you just sort of look at it and go, we've had the thing is, you look at the history of video games, like you said, there's been all this, the controllers improved, and you got your dual analog, and then the graphics went to HD, and, now they're 1080p, and we went from cartridges to discs and all this sort of stuff, online multiplayer. But then you look at the fads, the Wii with the motion controls, the Wii U with the touchpad. And as soon as like the Wii U came out, don't forget PlayStation and Xbox both had, you can use your phone or your tablet as a second screen. They all had it, and then it just died. 3D came along, everybody got into it, it died straight away. Motion controls, Sony were there straight away with the Move. They had the PlayStation Move. Microsoft had the
Well, that was purely in response to Nintendo, right? Their success.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. They just copied it straight away. They just they were like, we have to be there. Then you got the Kinect, and PlayStation had like the camera as well.
But to be fair, was Nintendo not successful with the Wii? Like the Move controller has died to a certain degree, but I mean, even the PlayStation 4 controller works off like a Move oriented, with a light.
Yeah, that's right. And no one ever uses that. And I remember when the PS3 came out, they had like the 6-axis. Remember how they had that like dragon game, Lair or whatever, and you could sort of tilt the controller like on the 6-axis and stuff, and then they just quietly drop that. The Wii was a success in and of itself, but is every game motion controlled now? No, it's just gone back to traditional control schemes again. I
don't think, as I said before, I don't think every game's going to be in virtual reality. Like 20 years from now, people will still be using a controller to play their games. But the application, I think, long term is like.
Oh yeah, like you said, the technology is there and it's solid and it's not going to go away, especially because it has so many business purposes and practical uses and things like that. And don't forget, you got Microsoft are making their augmented reality headset, which by all accounts it's probably never going to be released as like as a console add-on. Is primarily for business, the HoloLens. So I think, yeah, the technology's there and it's solid and it'll only get better. And like you said, now Google have announced some sort of VR headset for their new phone, the Google Pixel, just like the Samsung.
That's a bit deceptive, right? Because like it's only $100, but you got to pay like $1,500 for the phone.
Well, I don't know if the Google phones are usually that expensive, but yeah, it's the cheaper version of VR where basically the screen is your phone, just like the Samsung VR. And by all accounts, those VR are pretty decent. And you don't even need a helmet like that or a head, unit or anything, because you've got like the cardboard VR or whatever. Yeah. You can just make a little cardboard box and stick your phone in there, and even that kind of works to an extent. So I think you're right. The technology is there. It's solid. It'll get better, and the games, people will get more creative with the games. But I think for the foreseeable future, I think it's just going to fall by the wayside. That's my prediction. It's still just really all about graphics.
Yeah.
The one I'm curious about is that Rigs game on PSVR. How's that going to take off as like a e-sport game, as a multiplayer online competitive games? That one could be interesting. Yeah, that one I think could be quite interesting. Like you said, probably you'll get to the stage where every game will just have a VR option. So like I said, Resident Evil 7 will come out, or Halo 6 or whatever, any sort of first-person shooter, third-person action game, whatever. It will just be like, oh, do you want to play it in VR? And you can, but how many people are going to do that? I don't know, because don't forget, like a lot of people play video games for a long time.
Yeah.
People play like a 6-8 hour session. Can you play an 8-hour session with a helmet strapped to your head in VR? I don't know. I don't know if people can.
People will if there's enough motivation to. But right now, obviously, we'll talk about the games later. But
yeah. It's an amazing, it's like some amazing immersive experience where you're just losing yourself in it. Yeah, I guess, but I don't know if that's there yet. My prediction is I'm not expecting big things from it, and I don't think anybody's really going to push it that hard. That'll be part of it. So
I think it'll have a slow burn. I don't, just because of like the stock situation globally, like this will probably be something that gets like a second wave at Christmas type thing.
Well, maybe next Christmas, if the price can come down a little bit as well, because there's still a high point of entry as well. So maybe next Christmas, or when the Scorpio and the PS4 Pro kind of become the norm. Because that's the other thing there. You look at one of the interesting things with the PSVR is, so you've got the there's that little additional adapter box that comes with the VR that basically your HDMI from your PlayStation goes into that box, your helmet, your VR unit goes into that box, your audio goes into that box, and then that box goes into your TV.
I was surprised how many wires there were. Obviously, they need it, but like it was just like, whoa.
There's a lot there. There's a lot there. And then so one of the things there that was an interesting little tidbit on the when PlayStation released the FAQ there about the VR was that box can't transmit the HDR signal from your PlayStation. So it can transmit the 4K, but it can't transmit the HDR. So they're touting HDR, they're touting 4K, and HDR is getting a big push. And by all accounts, it actually does make a big difference.
What does that mean, that HDR can't be in the VR titles?
No, well, not only that, but if you've got a PSVR helmet, you need to plug the helmet into that box, and you need to plug your PlayStation into that box, right? So you play some PlayStation VR games. Great, cool, play them. Now you want to go and play, I don't know, Rise of the Tomb Raider. and you've got a kick-ass 4K TV, and you've got a PS4, but now you can't use the HDR, so you have to go and disconnect the HDMI cable of your PlayStation 4 from that box and plug it directly into your TV. Then when you want to switch back to PSVR, you got to take that HDMI cable back out of the TV, plug it into that box.
Is that a permanent thing?
What the hell?
Sort of firmware update that can fix that?
Apparently not. The only thing I think is that you only need that. I think you only need that box for the PlayStation 4. You don't need it for the Pro. I think I'm not 100% on that. So it might be that processing box.
Yeah.
I don't know if you need that if you have a PS4 Pro. Maybe the VR unit can go directly into the Pro.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not 100% clear on that. But if you need it for the Pro as well, then that is just a massive stuff up from PlayStation again, because
has that been 100% confirmed, has it?
Well, that was on their site, on their FAQ. It says, you know, can the I don't know what they call that, transmitter box or whatever it is, and one of the questions like, you know, can the transmitter box transmit a 4K signal? Yes, it can. Can the transmitter box transmit an HDR signal? Oh, no, it can't. You know, like, I'll give PlayStation credit for that. They don't shy away from it. They just say, like, no, it can't.
Just you don't think like the HDMI like just bypasses the actual box when it's playing a non-VR title? Like, it just completely ignores the fact that.
No, because the video signal goes through that box.
Yeah.
And so, it from what I'm understanding is it can't do it for whatever reason.
Interesting. I have to have a look into that.
I don't know if it's because that box doesn't have the bandwidth or the processing power. I don't know if it actually processes anything or if it just passes the signal through and it just doesn't have enough memory bandwidth or what to do it. But the fact that it can't is just another stuff up, because, you know, who's going to buy a PSVR right now is people with money, right? So those people probably have a 4K TV and they probably have HDR and they've probably got, you know, the HDR firmware is out, and now all of a sudden, you know, you can't play the HDR. You got to unplug it. I'd
be very surprised if it doesn't just like bypass through when you're playing a console game.
I don't see, from what I'm understanding, I don't think it can.
But that would be all over the internet. Like, why?
It is.
I've completely missed that.
I mean, I don't think that many people are concerned, because that's the other thing. Like, I just don't feel like PSVR is getting the buzz, or that people really care that much at this stage about HDR or PSVR or anything. Like, people, from the vibe I'm getting, is people just can't wait for like Battlefield 1, you know, or Final Fantasy or whatever the game it is that they're looking forward to before Christmas. That's all people care about. And all this stuff at the moment, you know, Xbox Scorpio, the 4K, HDR,
it depends
PSVR,
how big that first shipment was. Like, how many have they actually sold?
Yeah.
Oh, we don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, well, but not only that, but again, like, I'm not seeing PSVR going. Remember when the PlayStation 4 launched, you go on eBay on that first day or whatever, and there was like PlayStations for $1,000 and people were buying them up and stuff. Like, I just don't see that the PSVR is like a hot commodity that people are just clamoring for. Like, I'm not getting that vibe.
That can change, right?
It can, but at the moment, I feel like there's way more hype just for like Battlefield 1 or Final Fantasy or Last Guardian or whatever people want to play for Christmas. Like, that's where the hype is. People just care about the games. And that, you know, the PSVR again, it's almost like Sony are just kind of there because they can and they kind of want to and they want to be a part of it. But you know, if there is going to be a VR unit that's going to be a game changer, it would be the HTC or the Oculus. It's not going to be the PlayStation.
I don't think so, because I think the entry costs and the barrier to get in, PlayStation, Sony are in the best position to do that. And I think for Oculus Rift and Vive to be successful, I think the PlayStation needs to be successful. I think if that flops and it just completely crashes, I don't think Oculus Rift and HTC like survive that. They're all connected.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they need the push to get the mainstream acceptance. But then if you actually look at the sort of the capabilities of the units, you know, again, another one of those things that the PSVR doesn't have the same field of view as the HTC. It's got a narrower field of view. It's got lower res screens. And I think just the other thing that people complained about was that the tracking just wasn't there. I mean, again, the HTC is an expensive unit, and I think you get 2 cameras that do like laser tracking and all this sort of stuff. On the PSVR, you've got your PlayStation camera, like just the normal PlayStation 4 camera, and it basically just tracks the LED on your controller or on the PlayStation. And so I think it has some tracking issues as well there, and that kind of makes it not as smooth as the Vive or the Vive. So I think it's on a hardware level, like it's just not as good. But like you said, I mean, people are saying even the Samsung Galaxy VR is still pretty good and it's pretty impressive, and that's only like $100 or something. So like you said, most people, if they never played the Vive, then they wouldn't know, and they'd probably be blown away by the PlayStation.
So PlayStation's ecosystems is gonna benefit, I think, long term.
Yeah, it just depends on how quickly, like you said, how quickly are the titles going to come out? Are they going to be good titles? And how quickly can the price drop? Because at $5.99 in Australia, like it's not going to take off for a while.
It's $5.49, right?
$5.49, yeah. I mean, that's pretty expensive when you're looking at, you can get an Xbox One now for $3.99, and it comes with like Gears of War and FIFA and Fallout for $3.99. That's Christmas done right
What's
there.
What's annoying is the Move controllers. I don't know how many people have them sitting in their cupboard.
That's right, yeah, exactly. All of a sudden, the Move controller is back in demand and the camera's back in demand. And that's the other thing, like in Australia, like I said, there's no bundle. So if you get the VR, like how do you actually – apparently, I mean, you don't need the Move controller because you can play with the DualShock because it's got that light on it, but it's not the same. So, again, like selling it without a bundle, that's a bit sort of weird as well. But like I said, I suspect unless like games like Resident Evil come out and just sort of really blow people away – I think for the next year or two, you might just see like it's just going to be like a shovelware dumping ground, like the Kinect was, like gimmicky.
I'm a bit more confident about it than you are.
I just can't see. Look, the cost of making games now is so expensive. Like the stakes are so high. Like the investment, unless someone's really confident that they've got something amazing, or unless Sony push first party or pick up the publishing to a game, or Oculus obviously are publishing their own games as well, or if there is some indie developer or someone that comes along and does something on Steam for the Vive, I just can't see it happening. Like for a 500,000 install base, and that's all VR units combined, like who's gonna make the investment when you can just crank out another Call of Duty and you've got 7 million units sold?
So you don't think the PlayStation VR will have 500,000 by Christmas?
I don't know. I don't know what the figures. I don't know the technicalities of how much is being like pre-ordered.
Well, the second wave in Australia is coming before Christmas. I know that.
Yeah, I 500,000 worldwide, maybe.
Yeah,
that's a stretch. I mean, I don't know. That's a big call. I really don't know. I don't know how hot the pre-orders have been,
we just don't know the numbers, right?
We don't know the numbers. Remains to be seen. But I'm you saw what happened with the Wii, and then the Kinect. It was just a dumping ground for shovelware. There might be some good ones, but it'll just be like, hey, you're on a roller coaster. Hey, you're in a haunted mansion. Hey, you're in a Shark Tank. It'll be a lot of that kind of stuff. And there might be like a few good, there will be like a Resident Evil, and there might be something else that'll have like a VR mode or whatever. But generally, I think it's just going to be gimmicky stuff.
Let's come back to the PlayStation. We'll talk about games individually, that what we've seen and what we've experienced and all that. But you and I both have no pre-order for the VR, so for us it's business as usual when it comes to playing video games.
That's right.
I'm gonna assume you've been playing Trackmania. So anything else you've been playing? Like,
well, yeah. So Mafia 3, I actually haven't been playing a lot of Trackmania recently.
You bought that day one, right?
Yeah, I picked up Mafia 3 day one. I was fairly excited for it. I mean, I love open world games, and this one looked quite interesting. I didn't follow it too closely on the previews and the hype and stuff like that, but just sort of initial impressions. I was.
Did you play 1 or 2?
I didn't. I think I might have played a little bit of 2, but not much.
I'm the other way around. I played 1, but I didn't touch 2.
Okay, I remember those games at the time, and I think I might have touched them a little bit, but never really got heavily into them. So yeah, picked up Mafia 3, and it's all right.
Yeah,
it's all right. I mean, it's not. The story is really good. And the setup is really good, and the characters are really good. The voice acting's great. The cutscenes are great. The dialogue is great. You know, they've gone for that kind of 60s New Orleans sort of swampy American.
It's a made-up town,
vibe.
right? It's not based off like Boston or Chicago, right? It's like,
well, you're in New Bordeaux, which is essentially New Orleans, and it's got that whole vibe. You know, the people speak a little bit of French, and there's a little bit of that sort of southern, weirdness mixed with a bit of, that swampy vibe and all that kind of stuff. And then plus it's set against the backdrop of like the 60s in America, where you've got your racism and Vietnam War and stuff like that.
They mention that a bit, don't they? The racism. They don't shy away from that sort of.
No, well, there's actually, like, when you launch the game, there's actually like a bit of a disclaimer at the start saying basically like, hey, there's some racism in this game,
undertones,
but well, not even undertones, just like, undertones and blatant racism in this game. But they're like, we've, as developers, we've put that in there, having been, like, or they were saying like, we disagree, or we actually dislike these characters that we're portraying in this game, but we put them in there because that's how it was, and we're trying to reflect the reality of the situation that it was, and that would
people saying that's not a bad thing.
Well, no, I mean, look, and I don't even feel like that's just video games again for you, because, when someone makes a movie about the KKK in America, or, like you got American History X and Ed Norton's playing a Nazi skinhead, they don't apologize for the fact that, Ed Norton doesn't come out on screen and go, I'm sorry that I'm playing a Nazi skinhead, because everybody can see, or, people use their judgment and go, yeah, he's playing a bad guy and we kind of, dislike him or whatever.
I read a few comments, people saying that they felt uncomfortable because your main character, you get these like sly comments, you get called boy, and it's just like they feel uncomfortable about like.
They're just out now calling you the N-word and stuff like that. But again, the developers are saying, well, that's just how it was at the time, and it would almost be more racist to like not
do it,
put that in there, because then it would be kind of like pretending like it never happened or whatever. So I don't find a problem with it. Like the main character, Lincoln, that you play, is actually a real badass.
He's like ex-military, right?
He's ex-military, and so the whole set, the game starts off really cool. It's got an awesome soundtrack, like all the classic like 60s sort of like rock songs that you remember. Like if you've ever watched any Vietnam War movie or whatever, you got like your Jimi Hendrix and your Bob Dylan and your Creedence Clearwater Revival.
You think everyone's gonna like that, being from GTA with like like rap and like being able to customize?
It's still got radio stations. And it's got
like old.
It's all from the era, of course. So you've got like those. But the soundtrack is killer. Like, it's just all the big songs that you remember, Rolling Stones, just all that stuff, plus like blues and a little bit of, probably there's the country western, there's talkback radio and stuff like that. So the soundtrack is awesome. The voice acting is really good. The characters are good. And the initial setup for the game is really awesome. So, you're Lincoln, you've just come out of like, you were like special ops in Vietnam War. You're up to like all sorts of no good in there, like learning all these war techniques from the CIA, like getting up to all sorts of murky shit in the Vietnam War and stuff. You come back home and the sort of the family that took you in, the guy that took you in, his restaurants or his business is under threat from Haitian gangs. Plus, he's always paying like kickback to the Italian mob who sort of run the whole town anyway.
Is that scene in the soup kitchen where you're like doing the?
That's right. Yeah. One of the other sort of main characters is like a reverend that you kind of helping out with and stuff like that. And the whole setup is really cool. And the first couple of hours, it sort of sets the whole scene up, holds your hand a little bit, introduces you to a few of the game features and things like that, and really gets you hooked on the story.
How good is the transition from like main missions to side missions? Is it really open, or is it?
It's open, so once you sort of finish up that first couple of hours, then the game sort of opens up and basically shows you the map and starts giving you the options. But that's probably when the game starts to break down a little bit, because it's repetitive and it's just borrowing from all the other games, really. Like, you can just see elements of every other game. So, for example, it copies from GTA or because you've got the radio stations and they're playing all this cool music or whatever, but then you switch over to another radio station and it's got those like joke, sarcastic ads, you know, those ones with the really obnoxious like radio announcer doing like
disc jockeys and all that.
Yeah, that's right. Like doing, hey, have you got hemorrhoids? We've got the cure for that. But, you know, like in the 60s style or whatever. And it's kind of like a little bit jarring because, I don't know, it just doesn't fit in. And then they've got like news reports as well of crimes that you've committed and things like that. So it's borrowing that from there. But then, like, it's got some stuff that they kind of picked up from Watch Dogs. Like, so the setup is once the story's been set up and you kind of get unleashed, it's basically, look, spoiler alert, but basically you're going to take down the mob. You're going to take down the Mafia, and you're going to basically take over their strongholds and become the Mafia kingpin.
Is it a serious tone like Watch Dogs? You know, where like Edin was very like subdued in that, or is he?
It is. So the main character, LinkedIn, he's pretty badass, and it is sort of like pretty serious there. And he's just sort of determined to destroy the Mafia, but not just destroy them, but then actually he's going to take over and he's going to become a Mafia kingpin. So you've got all these headquarters and bases and things. And then, so that's where like they kind of ripped off a little bit of Watch Dogs, so that each headquarters, for example, has like a couple of informants that might be there. And so to be able to turn, you can either just kill the informants or you can turn them and have them work for you. To have them work for you, you have to wiretap or bug the warehouse or whatever.
That sounds
so you pick up, it's all right, but you know, like you're picking up these little bits and pieces that you find scattered around the map. Well, no, and then you go in and actually you do there's like a hacking mini game and you can do some hacking and wiretap the building, and then that opens up the map and shows you all of the things in that section of the map, like all the collectibles, where the bad guys are, whatever. So there's a little bit of that.
Can you do every side mission like before doing like say the second main mission, or is it like Watchtower, like Far Cry Allah, where you got to like progress a certain way to?
The storyline missions progress in a certain way, but if you probably want to just go in and take over all the strongholds and things like that, I think you can probably do that. But the storyline missions kind of open up in certain ways, and to follow that storyline. But already, like, only just a few hours past that intro, and it's just like you said, it's a little bit repetitive, and the AI is bad. The AI is really bad, and the shooting is just unsatisfying. Like, it's just a third-person cover shooter, like
stealth-based, or?
Well, and so, I mean, so that's the thing. So you've got the stealth. You can obviously take cover. You can whistle to get guys' attention. You can do stealth takedowns. You can do like brutal takedowns as well, where you kill the guys. But the AI is just really bad. So, you know, like one of the areas when I'm trying to clear out this hideout, and I hide behind this thing, and I'm hiding behind a pillar, and then you can sort of go into like tactical mode, and you can see silhouettes of where all the bad guys are.
Okay.
Like
the heat.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. You can see their heat map, and so I can see like a couple of guys there. I whistle. One of them comes over to investigate. I'm hiding behind this pillar, and he's coming. He just walks straight towards me.
Yeah.
And I strangle him. Then the guy that he was talking to decides to investigate. He comes and he just walks straight up to the pillar, and I strangle him.
So it feels almost scripted in a way, like in that way. Yeah.
And then I don't know how all the other guys that were hanging around, there's probably about another 6 to 8 of them. One by one, they all start walking towards me. Like one guy, again, another guy, he must have sensed something or something triggered him. He starts walking towards me. Again, I'm just hiding behind that pillar. He walks towards me. I strangle him.
Do they see the dead
Then
bodies?
Another guy comes. Yeah, and they were just piling up next to me. And they, one at a time, they just kept walking towards me, and I just sat there crouched. Yeah, and I strangled each one until there was about 8 bodies piled up next to me. And then I went and found the informant.
Yeah.
And turned him so that he worked for me, and that was the end of the stage. I was like, okay, that was really bad. So the AI is just really.
Was this a main mission or side?
I think this was part of a main mission.
Okay.
And it was just really, it just kind of got a bit boring, actually. Just sort of waiting for these guys to come at you one by one and you strangle them.
Do you see yourself getting the plat trophy? Because I had a quick look because I was interested. We're both into trophies, and it's kind of annoying you have to play through twice. Like,
yeah, it looks like I think some people might probably do some crafty saves there and try and maybe back up their save or something like that. But it seems like, so basically when you take over certain areas, you can basically recruit that person then to work for you, and you get kickbacks. Yeah, or you can kill them. So straight away after the intro, you get one of the people working for you.
Yep.
And so I think that one you don't really get a choice. But then I think the trophy is either you just keep that one person and all the other guys, you kill them and take over all of it, and that would get you one trophy. But then the other trophy is that I think you have to have all of them. You have to recruit all of them. So, probably 2 playthroughs. But the rest of the trophies seem pretty straightforward and a little bit disappointing because there's heaps of collectibles in the game. You can go around, there's like Playboy magazines or like vintage Playboy magazines from the 60s and stuff that you can collect and all that sort of stuff. And none of those collectibles are a trophy.
Oh, really?
There's like pin-up posters of all like pin-up girls from the 60s and stuff like that. None of that's a trophy.
Yeah.
So that's actually a little bit disappointing because then there's probably like not much reason to collect them.
That's
Although
weird,
when you hack those areas, all those collectibles just pop up on the maps. You can just go and find them. So it's probably not much of a challenge anyway.
That's like Watch Dogs did that, didn't they? When you said
exactly. That was what I'm saying. So it's almost like Watch Dogs. You hack the tower, and then that area of the map gets revealed, and it all kind of becomes obvious. So, and that's what. So like, the AI is disappointing there, but also just the shooting and the action is just a little bit unsatisfying. So early on, there's actually some cool set pieces. One of the early missions that basically takes you to like an abandoned carnival, sort of like a fun house thing, and it's actually pretty cool. Like it's abandoned, but it's all the Mafia there, and the rides and everything come on, and there's neon lights, and it's a little bit creepy, but they're all there, and then you have to go through like one of those like haunted houses, but it's like a racist KKK haunted house theme park or whatever. So you're going through there and dudes are popping out at you and stuff like that. So the set piece is really cool, and the colors and the graphics there are really cool, but just you don't get any sort of satisfying feeling when you shoot the bad guys. There's like very limited physics, and so there's a lot of weapons and you can pick them up, and you'll get the shotgun and you just blow this dude away, but his body will just kind of, I don't know, there's no ragdoll or anything like that. He'll kind of just die.
That's weird because the animation for the takedown seems pretty smooth.
So when you do a takedown, it actually goes into an animation, like a canned animation,
like a finisher.
And I think and it's like a random one. I think there's probably a handful of them, and it just goes into that sort of. It's almost like a cutscene kind of thing. So they're pretty cool. But when you're just shooting dudes, sometimes it's just like you don't get that feeling like that the bullets are hitting them. It's almost just kind of like. Yeah, it's very unsatisfying.
What about the driving? Do you like? Is that feel?
The driving is actually pretty cool. So
better than Watch Dogs.
Look, I can't even remember.
Yeah.
I remember Watch Dogs being a bit loose.
Yeah.
But these are sort of like 60s cars. You've got all like your Cadillacs and kind of like hot rod looking cars and things like that. So they're not super fast, and they handle probably like a shopping trolley. But it's actually got a really cool camera. Where the camera's like sort of really up close behind the car. And as you sort of like power sliding around corners and things, like the camera kind of gets a bit wobbly and sort of tilts around and sort of stuff like that. And so the driving's actually pretty cool. It does have that thing like the old Mafia games where, look, you can drive recklessly, but when you smash into something, like you really feel the impact in your car, like it really knocks your car around and slows you down big time. And then if police are close by, the radar will kind of pop off. And if you start doing too much dodgy stuff when the cops are in view of you, they will come after you. But otherwise, you can sort of get away with it. And that's
have you seen what happens if you do get arrested, or have you always got?
I haven't actually tried. I haven't actually tried messing with the cops yet, because I've sort of just been following the storyline. But I think that you do get into there was actually an early mission where the cops were chasing you, and basically you go into like a red zone, and the cops are sort of actively trying to hunt you down and shoot you to kill. And then once you escape the area, then it goes into like a blue sort of cool down zone where the cops are sort of still hunting you, but not as aggressively. And I think give it a minute or so, and then they just give up their search. But that was another thing there with the Watch Dogs, where when you commit a crime, like civilians might try and like
call the cops and that.
So it pops up and it's like this guy gets onto the payphone and he like tries to call the cops, and you just like beat him down and stuff. So it's funny, like I was doing that, and I think I broke into a car. Some guy like ran onto the payphone, started calling the cops. I beat him down, and there was like another guy on the street started like going off at me. He's like, what are you doing? What do you think you're doing? But he didn't like do anything. He was just kind of like abusing me, like, I know what you're doing. So I was just like beating this guy up. So look, they've taken bits from other games, but the graphics are nice, the driving's good, the story is really good so far. I'm really enjoying it. The characters are good. So you've got like your guys, you've got the Italian mob, you've got these Haitians, there's like the Dixie Mafia, like the rednecks and stuff like that. Like the story is really good, and the characters are good, and the dialogue and all that sort of stuff, it's really good. But I can already see like it's very bland. Like
outside of the main missions.
Yeah, that's right. Like the side missions and things is basically just take over all the areas, and that's about it. And you take over the areas.
Is there any like taxi like transport missions? Because Mafia 1 had that.
I haven't encountered that yet. There is the other thing is, so as you take over the areas and you recruit these bosses, if you don't kill them, then those bosses can bring you perks. So there's like some upgrade things there. You can upgrade your health, you can upgrade weapons and things like that. So the first underboss that you get, they basically bring you, there's a mobile van that you can call in, and it'll come and you can buy weapons out of the back of a truck. And there's like a few other upgrades there as well. But, you get these underbosses, they run the territory for you, they bring in all this money. But I'm just sort of wondering to what end? Like, what do you need all the money for? Because I can't see what you're going to do with all the money.
Can you buy like safe houses or anything like that?
There's safe houses. I don't know if you can buy additional ones, or if you, I don't think you can buy businesses either, because you just sort of take over. So I'm wondering, like, it just looks like it's kind of a bit half-hearted. Like, the storyline and stuff is good, but the actual open world elements look
It's
a
a bit
little
bland.
bit generic. Yeah. So I mean, it remains to be seen.
Would you recommend it to people to buy it or wait for a sale?
I would say probably wait because I can see
It
this
doesn't
one
have
dropping
online,
in price.
right?
No, I don't think so.
No.
There is, I think there's an option in there for DLC, so there's probably going to be some DLC. I don't think there's anything there yet, but it's in the menu.
Yeah.
But just the look and the feel and the vibe and all that, like they've nailed it to a T. Like it's perfect. That whole Louisiana, New Orleans, swampy southern vibe. It's nice, the look and feel of it. Sometimes the graphics look really good as well. Sometimes they look a little bit iffy, but sometimes it looks really nice. All of that is good. The actual open world gameplay really let down, I think, by the AI. Okay. Like it's a cover-based third-person shooter.
Yeah.
And so the guys, again, you can either pick them off. You can go from cover to cover and pick them off tactically with stealth, or you can just run and gun. But they're sort of in groups scattered around the area, and as you progress through the area, they come and hunt you.
Yeah.
But they don't look for you, or they don't try and flank you. They just kind of, sometimes they just like run straight past you. I'm in cover, and these guys, you can hear them. They're like, "Oh, I'm going to find you," and they just run straight past you in front of you, and you just pop out of cover and like mow them down. Like, the AI is really disappointing. It just kind of makes it not worth.
That can be frustrating.
It is, because it's kind of just a little bit boring. And then on the other hand, if you play it tactically and you try and do stealth, again, it's a little bit unsatisfying, because it's really just creep up to them, take them down, creep up to the next guy, take him down, and just like work your way through. And there's no tactics from the AI. There's nothing there. It's just, I mean, maybe it is on the hard. I'm playing it on medium difficulty. You can choose to play. So at the start of the game, you can choose easy, normal, or hard. And you can choose no aim assist, low aim assist, or high aim assist. So there's no lock on.
I've read that putting it on hard doesn't actually improve their like intelligence. It's just how quickly they like look at you, like lock on and fire, so it's not gonna.
I wouldn't have thought so. The AI is just really dumb, and like I said, there's just no satisfaction from the shooting. Like the mechanics are fine. You can pop out of cover. You can, there's heaps of weapons, easy to pick up, easy to change weapons. You can throw Molotovs. You can shoot dudes nicely, but when you shoot them, they just don't go down in a satisfying way. It doesn't feel like the bullets are impacting them. Or sometimes like you'll put a guy down and you can actually see him like crawling on the floor, and you go into like shoot him one more time to finish him off, and it just kind of, it's almost like the bullet just kind of goes through him and his body just stops moving. Like there's no impact. So it's just a little bit unsatisfying there, which is a shame, because like I said, so much of it is really well done. So
you think like the DLC needs to focus on like variety of like missions and just try to make the AI more like tighter?
Well, I don't know if they can. So, I mean, I just feel like, like you said, the DLC might be more missions and things like that, or they might try and add backstory, because obviously one of the, I guess in the early part of the game, when you come back from Vietnam, you kind of go back to this place where these guys that took you in, they were sort of fighting the Haitian mafia and doing kickbacks to the Italian mafia. So maybe there'll be like some DLC that explores their relationship from like way back when, or something like that. That's just a guess. I don't know, but I can't see them actually improving the AI within the DLC unless they're working on it right now. But it's bad. The AI is bad, and it kind of ruins the game a little bit. I think you can still look past it, because like I said, the storyline is strong, and the story missions are pretty good, and the set pieces and the scenarios that they set up for you are pretty good. But it's just a little bit,
doesn't challenge the status quo enough.
No, and it's just a little bit generic. So I think the story needs to carry it. And that's why I've seen reviews. I think IGN gave it maybe a 7.5, and then I've seen other places give it like 2 out of 5.
Really? So, 2 out of 5? Wow.
Yeah, I think it's just And a lot of it seems to be getting sort of like a lot of 5s, a lot of 6s.
Yeah.
It's going to be the story's going to make or break it. If you get into the story and you start enjoying that aspect of it, you'll work your way through the missions. But it's no GTA, it's no Saints Row. You're not just going to be like lapping up the side missions, loving the diversions and things, which is a little bit unfortunate.
Well, fingers crossed that Watch Dogs 2 is better, because that's where I'm putting my money on.
Yeah, I think Watch Dogs 2 will probably be a little bit more polished in some of those areas. And I mean, it's the second game already on this generation, so they they knew what they need to do. And Ubisoft, I mean, you know, they've probably got like about 3,000 people working on that game. So like, I'm sure there'll be issues, but I think it'll be a little bit better in that regard.
All right, let's move on to PlayStation VR. We talked about VR in the opening segment, but so it's out in 2 days. There's still quite a few games. You mentioned Riggs, that's still under embargo, so there's a few things we haven't seen at all. But I've seen a fair amount of Batman Arkham VR now. I actually really like what I'm hearing, what I've seen. There's questions over the duration, like once you play the 2.5, 3 hour whole experience, why would you ever go back? There's no platinum, it's 100% trophies. Have you seen much of it? What do you think of it?
Yeah, the Batman looks good, and I've seen like good reviews of that. I think people are pretty happy with that.
It seems to be the standout for most.
Yeah, and like you said, it's just the problem that it's just like a little tidbit. It's not a fully fledged experience. It's more just like, you know, hey, check out Batman in VR. Here's a little bit of stuff that we, you know, what we could do in a couple of, you know, months.
I read that Rocksteady put like 60 employees on it, so that's, I mean, it's a fair effort.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And probably, you know, I mean, PlayStation might be sort of kicking them a little bit of money there as well. I mean, they've got the exclusivity and stuff like that, so there might be, you know, and probably they're thinking, like you said, if PlayStation VR can sell 500,000 units, then probably, you know, they're going to sell 350,000 copies of Batman VR. So
I'd say so, yeah.
There's still a fair bit of money in it for them. And, you know, sometimes you see that tactic like Ubisoft. Ubisoft are there day one on every, like, Nintendo console launch, because they know, look, Nintendo is going to sell a shitload of copies at launch.
Yep.
People are going to be looking for games. They might as well buy whatever we put out. So there's probably a little bit of that. But, yeah, the Batman one looks good, and everybody seems to be pretty positive on it. It's just that, like you said, it's probably just not enough.
Yeah.
But as a foundation of something to build on, yeah, it looks pretty good. And
it needs to be the standard, right? Like going forward, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, this is, like you said, if they could actually make like a 20, 30-hour experience built on that, and maybe, you know, there's a little bit of sort of R&D element from Rocksteady as well, where they're sort of, you know, thinking, let's just sort of put some employees on this. We'll make a little bit of money, but we can also come to grips with VR and see what we can get out of it ourselves. But yeah, that one definitely seems to be the standout, and is getting some good reviews. Probably just, like you said, not long enough.
Yeah, another game I played. I don't think you played the original Until Dawn, but I got the 100%. I don't think it had a plat. I really liked Until Dawn. I'm not 100% sure why Rush of Blood has the Until Dawn tag on it. It feels like it's a completely different standalone game. But essentially it's like a rail shooter. From what I've seen, the fast pace of like the roller coaster seems to handle itself well in VR. Have you seen much of it? What do you think? Do you like rail shooters like as a...
I don't mind them. If I had a light gun, if there was a light gun involved, then yeah. Like you said, I think it's probably just Until Dawn is now like a Sony franchise.
It's a brand that can,
It's now a brand, so this game's like got horror elements. Maybe they just tacked it on. Just
the bad guy, there's like a unique mask, and that seems to be in the VR title.
Yeah, and again, maybe they just shoehorn that in there at some point just to give it a little bit more a recognition or something like that, because like I said, Until Dawn was a little bit of a cult hit in the end.
Very good.
I mean, I like rail shooters, especially, like I said, if they got light gun and stuff like that. But from what I've seen, from what I've heard, people basically won't give this one the time of day. Everybody just says it's rubbish. It's just one of those things. Like,
it makes me think that like a game like Time Crisis would be really good in VR.
Yeah, something. Yeah. I mean, I like those kind of games, and like you said, those games were even in the arcade cabinet back in the day. You know, like the bullets flying at you and the glass cracking when you get hit, like in Time Crisis and things like that. It could work. But I think this one just looks like a little bit of a throwaway title, really. And there's been a fair few. Well, there's been a fair few on-rail shooters on PlayStation throughout the years. You remember, like I think it's some Resident Evil games that came out had that. I think there was a couple of other different titles that they had. They've kept them sort of coming every now and then. It's like a classic genre that I guess for some reason like Sony just sort of keep in the back of their mind, and every now and then put out another on-rail shooter. And maybe this is almost like a title that they had sitting in the works for a while and kind of thought, well, let's just shoehorn it in with Until Dawn and VR. Now's the time to get it out. But
it's those horror games that are probably going to succeed, like initially, right, in VR.
That's right. But I think people want something more than an on rails. They kind of probably want
Resident Evil.
Or they want those kind of like jump scare games or the creepy games or whatever. But this one's more like I guess like a carnival fantasy ride or something like that. And I can't see too many people getting too excited about that one.
What about like Job Simulator? This is a game that I like read description, I watch, I'm like, how is this fun? But everyone I've spoken to, they seem to love this thing.
Yeah, Job Simulator seems to be getting some good vibes, and I think from what I've read, people just sort of are happy that it's kind of just
to interact with the technology, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I think people are enjoying that one, and also because it's almost like it's different to everything else that's sort of out in VR. It's not a shooter. It's not horror.
It's quirky, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit different as well. So I think that's why that one's getting a little bit of good vibes. Again, for me, is that something that gets me excited? I mean, would you pay $550 for a VR headset to play that? Probably not.
No.
But I think it's just something different. So that's why probably people are sort of drawn to it a little bit, because everything else like Batman and Until Dawn and stuff like that, it's all like a little bit dark and creepy and stuff like that. So this is just something a little bit different, I guess.
Yeah, it's similar to the PlayStation VR Worlds. It's like Nintendo Land, where it gives you like 5 different concepts. Just like a proof of concept for like virtual reality.
Yeah, right.
That's where
this is what you were saying. This is not available in the Australian bundle, is it?
I read an article on, I think it's the Australian or Business Insider. It was like an Australian themed site, and they mentioned that VR Worlds came with the VR unit. So, but I haven't read that anywhere else, so I'm not 100% sure if this comes with.
Well, look, if they're not even going to do a bundle where you get the move and the camera, it's almost like they just don't give a shit about the Australian market at this stage. Like I said, VR is in its infancy, and make or break is whether they can, clear 1 million units in the US selling.
I'd be very surprised if you charge $550 for a headset and then not give people demos to play.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah,
have you seen any of these individual things like Scavenger's Odyssey, some like Mass Effect type of like space combat where you're in like a mech suit, and then like Ocean Descent's like that Shark Attack, which we live in Australia, so we've seen enough of them already. But
yeah, that's right. I haven't actually seen that. I haven't seen that collection. So
you've seen the London Heist, where you're like in that entire
and that one I think got some favorable reviews and word of mouth. I think after, was it E3?
Yeah, I
think after Kanye West played London Heist on VR and he loved it, so that's kind of why that one got a little bit popular. But I haven't seen much of that collection. But like you said, I don't even know if that's available in Australia or not. Like, I don't know what the deal is there.
I tried to research whether it came with the unit, but there's no information like at all. Like, no of the retailers give that information out. They just say $550. Camera's not included. Like, they don't.
And and that's the thing. I guess you can't even buy it, so they're not even putting the information out, because I think
It's sold, right?
The pre-orders went out so long ago that at that point no one knew what they were getting anyway, and those people just kind of put their money down and said, whatever you're going to get, just give it to me. So I don't even know what the box looks like or what the package like. I don't know anything about it. Like, I don't know when will be the earliest that we'll actually see it on store shelves. Like, I saw in the big catalog, the games are out. The games are in the catalog. They're all priced. Drive Club VR and rigs and stuff like that.
You like to look at that? Drive Club? Have you seen the VR?
Look, I love Drive Club. I have the VR stuff. I don't know. Like,
looks all right.
It looks all right. For me, I'd be more interested in getting a steering wheel for a racing game than a VR. Yeah. But if you could somehow people do both, right? Yeah, if you could combine both, that could be wicked. But, you know, Drive Club, I really enjoyed Drive Club, so I'd be curious to see how that one goes. Is it just the entire game in VR, or is it actually a separate game?
I think it's like its own tour, like, you know how they sort of did the DLC.
Okay. So you're not going to get, right, so it's going to be like a cut-down version.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I saw on Giant Bomb, I think they did the Oculus or the HTC Vive with like the new Dirt game or some racing game. And it was actually pretty hard to play. Like, it looked awesome. You're in that cockpit view and you had the helmet on. And, you know, you could tilt your head and you could look at the steering wheel. You could look at the gear knob. You could look at the empty seat next to you and all that sort of stuff. But it made it, like, super hard to drive.
Well, it's like this big mental thing, right? Like, you feel like you're moving, but you're not. So your body and your brain are, like, clashing with each other.
Well, not only that, but even then, like, whenever I find racing games hard to play from that cockpit view just because of the visibility. Like, I know they're trying to make it realistic, but I think if you're in real life, when you're in the cockpit and you're looking through the windscreen, it's different than when they put it in the game and they chuck in the glare and the reflection, and it's just super
many distractions,
hard.
right?
Yeah, it's just so hard to play. And this one, you could see like they were really struggling with it with the helmet on. Like, it was so difficult to play. So I don't know how well that will go down eventually.
There's 3 games that I'm interested in from a success standpoint. One of them is Resident Evil, because I think that's going to be the big console seller. Unit seller for VR. And the other 2 is Battlezone and Rigs, which you mentioned, both because they have online components. And I'm interested whether VR can successfully be competitive in like an online space.
Well, Rigs just looks cool. Like, without the VR, like, it actually looks like a pretty cool game. Like, it's kind of got that whole...
It reminds me of the old school Unreal Tournament that used to be that rocket ball type game. I forget what it was called.
Yeah, it's got that whole like arena vibe, and it just looks like nice bright colors and stuff like that. So it actually just looks like a really cool game. So I'm just curious to see that as a game.
It's like, weird that it's embargoed, right? Like, so many VR games have been open to...
Yeah, look, and that's that. We discussed that last week. Like, I don't even know what the deal is with embargoes anymore. Like,
I wonder if it's just because it's online and there's no service for anyone.
Well, and that's the excuse that's been used by games in the past. You know, like, I remember when the Destiny embargo was there, that, you know, Bungie were like, oh, well, there's just no point. There's no point playing it when the servers aren't populated because you won't get a good experience or something like that. So I don't know what the deal with embargoes is anymore. But that game looks interesting. Like, I'll reserve judgment until I actually see it in action and see people playing it. But what I'm curious about is, can you actually play that game without VR? I don't think you can. Can you? You have to have the
I think it's pure
VR. Yeah. Okay, that's a bit disappointing because that game looks super awesome. But yeah, I want to see more of that. That game looks cool.
Did you see any of Battlezone?
I haven't. What's that one about?
It's like a futuristic, like tank arena combat, but they were just showing the campaign, so it was like you like invading a base and like shooting turrets and, like, you know, rocket launchers and other tanks, and it was just like a like arena, you know what I mean, like a 1v5.
But from a first person point of view, or
you're inside the
you're in the turret,
in the tank. You like drive a tank around.
Okay.
and you shoot like their base, but it's meant to have online, so like 1v1 and I assume 2v2 and stuff like that. So I mean that's why that game's going to be get a massive attention to it. I think like Rigs, right? Like it needs to succeed for
Yeah, I
like the
mean, look,
long
I haven't
term.
seen that one. With Riggs, it definitely looks like it looks polished, and it looks like they're taking the esports stuff quite seriously. So
Yeah.
if that game controls well and plays well, then that could be something big. But like I said, I'll reserve judgment on that one. I think
It
until we
felt like
actually.
Riggs was like made like we want to be in esports. What can we make? And then they sort of came up with the design.
But it looks pretty cool. Like I
Yeah,
think they've kind of done something interesting there instead of just here's another shooter.
like
Here's another
Titanfall type
yeah,
thing.
exactly.
Yeah,
Like I think they've done something, and it's not a MOBA, whereas there's no
no,
MOBA
sick of them,
concepts
man.
in
Like
there.
just go away now.
Yeah, so I think they've done something unique and cool there. So I'm curious to see it. I have high hopes for that one.
Is there anything else about VR you wanted to you mentioned like you saw or anything that's interesting you?
No, look, I mean, I actually thought it was launched. I only just saw
Two
today
days,
that
right?
it was still 2 days to go. So yeah, I'll be curious to see then after the launch.
Do you reckon if you were like super keen, you could go to stores and just bounce around, hope someone doesn't pick up their pre-orders in like 2 or 3 days?
I doubt it.
No.
I think you'd have very little chance.
Yeah.
No one's gonna. Well, it depends. I can't remember what deposits
$50.
places were asking for, were they? So
Yeah.
yeah, what I'm curious to see is once it launches, what are the threads that are going to start popping up on Reddit and NeoGAF? Like, is there going to be glitches? Is there going to be some sort of hardware problems, or are people just going to start, are people going to be raving about how awesome it is, or are people going to be saying like, I'm bored of it already, or
Well, that's the
I'm
thing, right?
curious,
Like,
like,
people are
how
saying
they're
there's
going to.
like calibration issues, like where like the way you're directing the like the move controllers will like just cut out, so you've got to like
Well,
calibrate.
that's what I think that's what I was mentioning at the start was, yeah, sometimes it would just stop tracking your move
Yeah,
controllers. Or I think if the room might not be dark enough, it might not be able to
yeah,
pick up the move controllers, or if there's like if you've got something with a flashing light, that it might
yep,
distract the camera. And that's where I think the Vive is a lot more powerful because it's got the two cameras.
yep.
And I think it's like a different tracking mechanism, whereas this one's just looking for that glow. It's just
Well, that's
looking
a
for that
restriction,
glowing
right? You
light.
turn around from the PSVR, it's not going to know what you're doing anymore.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So I think that's what I was saying there with the PlayStation VR. It's got some hardware limitations and things like that. So I'll be curious to see how people actually react to it once it's in the hands of everyday people, and the issues and the quirks and all those sort of things start coming to light. I'll be curious to see over the next couple of weeks just what happens and how it actually goes down.
I feel like what's going to happen is you'll buy it, you'll buy like the 3 or 4 games, you'll play the tech demos that came with it. You'll spend 20 to 30 hours on the whole thing, and then it'll be collecting dust until Resident Evil.
Well, that's right. And yeah, and look, I mean, I know you've got your hopes pinned on Resident Evil, but I
I
can't
do,
see.
yeah.
Look, Resident Evil's a big title. It's not actually that mainstream of a game.
That's
I know,
not
like
why I've got good hopes for it. I've got good hopes for it because when it was called The Kitchen and they were
Hmm.
showing this kitchen demo to VR, people were saying that it was like really scary and like the atmosphere and the immersion was beautiful. So if
Yeah.
it can transition that one level to the whole game, I think on VR it'll be like hugely successful.
Oh, look, I think it'll. Yeah, if it can do that, if it will be successful. But again, I don't see that being a system seller, just because it will be to an extent that it's a hardcore title. But if you look at
Yeah,
again, like, if you look at the Nintendo Wii, the reason it broke through is because of Wii Sports.
yeah,
And Wii
yeah,
Sports, like, it was like, your grandmother could play it,
yeah.
your kids could play it, people at work would play it. And that's the thing, like, at the end of the day, Resident Evil is still like a hardcore title, and it's a horror title. And
Well, it's
like, it
not
will
even
do.
that, right? Like no family's buying 4 VR headsets.
No, that's right. And,
Yeah,
it might, people, gamers might love it, and it might be a really good
yeah.
title, and it might get the Resident Evil franchise back on track. But for VR to be like, to break into the mainstream and take off, you need a sports game, or you need like some sort of rhythm game or something. Like Resident Evil, even if it does well and sells millions, it's not going to propel VR into the mainstream.
I saw, speaking of sports game, I saw this weird like football, soccer, like heading VR
is that
title.
the head ball or something like that?
Don't like that at all.
Okay, that's meant to be. I heard some people saying that was actually kind of fun.
No, I just don't like the idea where you make a game and like it's heading, like it's not even like actual foot skills.
Okay. Yeah. I heard some people saying that one was fun. The other one I think that a lot of people are looking forward to is that Star Trek one. That was the one where when you said 4 VR helmets, that's the one that got me thinking, because apparently you can basically just reenact being on the Star Trek.
What's that for? Oculus and...
I think that, I don't know if that's on PlayStation or not.
No, it's not. Because it was at the Microsoft E3 conference.
So it might be an Oculus thing next. I think Microsoft are going to try and team up with Oculus to bring the Oculus to Scorpio. So that one actually, I think, has a lot. See, that's the kind of game that's going to get people involved, because people who don't care about video games, but they love Star Trek, and now, hey, you and your mates can all put a helmet on and reenact being on the deck of the Enterprise. That's gonna, like, people are gonna love that. Like, that's the kind of stuff that it needs.
Wouldn't it be cool if like the Star Wars game did that? You could be like 4 like X-wings like flying into like the...
Yeah, exactly. So that's when you start talking, like, you start looking at the possibilities, like what you can do. So I think the Resident Evil, or how you can play it in VR, even like if the next Batman Arkham game came out and you could play it in VR, or Fallout in VR or whatever, like that'll go to an extent. But for VR to go to the next level, it needs to be like, hey, you're in this
collaborative experience.
It needs to be something like, hey, you're in this Pixar movie, like, I don't know, Toy Story, and you can run around and play with all the toys or something like that. Like, it needs to be something that's just like a full mainstream experience, and that, I think, is still a ways away. So we'll see. But
I'm really interested to see like the non-gaming applications. That's what I'm.
Yeah, that's right. And then you've got all that sort of stuff again, like, whatever it is, from the engineering, architecture, whatever else they can do there. Like,
I know you're hanging out for the Japanese dating sims.
Oh, yeah. Apparently, what's the one, like Dead or Alive, or one of those ones has got like the creepy VR mode where you can like hide in the bushes and like spy on the girl. I think it's the Dead or Alive.
How have I not heard of this?
Isn't it? I think it's Dead or Alive.
Probably.
You know those Dead or Alive, not the fighting games, but like the extreme
volleyball and all that.
The volleyball ones. But you can like creep on the girls and like stalk them from the bushes and stuff like that, and that just looks horrible.
And educational.
You'll start seeing stuff like that as well. I think that people will go. I think already people are saying, like, there is VR porno, and like
that's been around for a while.
Well, they always talk about like porno was the one that made VHS take off, and then DVD take off and stuff like that, and now they're investing in VR, and there's all like porno VR, and
it's one thing you won't find on the PlayStation VR.
Yeah, and then who knows? Like you said, who knows what else it'll be like? Oh, hey, maybe you can watch the football as if you're at Old Trafford or something, like you're in the crowd. Like, that still might be 10, 15 years away, but you know what I mean? Like, they might deck out like hundreds of cameras around the football stadium and try and like position them in certain areas of the stand or whatever, and then like you can tap into a feed and watch the game as if you were from there or something like that. Cool. And like, who knows what kind of stuff is going to happen in the future. So that's where it's going to be, not Resident Evil in VR. That'll be cool, and I'd like to maybe play it, but that's not going to make mum and dad go, oh yeah, we got to get a headset. So I'll be curious to see what happens over the next couple of weeks with PSVR, and just to see what people actually think of it now that it's finally out.
Finally here, Obviously, the upcoming game releases is heavily inspired and focused on VR because, as we said, it's in 2 days. But is there anything away from that you're interested in? Obviously, today you can pick up Rise of the Tomb Raider, you can pick up Gears of War 4, you can pick up the Wrestling 2K17.
Yeah,
what are you looking forward
huge,
to?
yeah, the huge releases are just sort of starting to drop now, and I think over the next couple of weeks, it's going to be huge because you've got maybe not next week, but within the next sort of month or so, you're going to have, I think, week after week, you're going to have Titanfall 2, Battlefield 1.
Last Guardian.
Well, but I'm just saying, even just from a point of view of the shooters, you're going to have Titanfall 2, okay. Battlefield 1, Infinite Warfare, and I think there might be one more as well. Am I missing something? Is there going to be
Dead Rising 4 comes out?
Dead Rising 4.
December.
I feel like there's one more. Is there one more competitive shooter that I'm missing there, or is that the 3 that you're going to have? Titanfall 2, Battlefield 1, and Infinite Warfare 1. I don't know in which order, but basically one after the other.
Infinite Warfare is the 4th of November.
Right.
Battlefield is the 21st of October.
Yep. So you got Battlefield 1 comes out first, then Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, and then somewhere around there is Titanfall 2 as well.
Yeah.
So that's
Titanfall 2 is the 28th of October. Yeah. So they're like in a 2-week period. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's 3 like massive shooters, one after the other there. So that's going to be like.
Are you going to get any?
If I was to get one, I would probably get a Call of Duty. And again, like, it looks pretty cool. I
was really impressed with the single player.
The Call of Duty single player is always pretty good, and they've always recruiting. Excuse me, like, they're always recruiting big name actors now. They've got the
Conor
Jon
McGregor.
Snow, and Jon Snow from Game of Thrones is in there, and they always do like a cool story. So I think that'll be good. I don't know if they've shown much about the multiplayer, and that's where it will probably make or break. Like, again,
if you look on YouTube, you'll find a few gameplay videos, but they didn't really show the zip line. You throw the line and you like attach to it and you fly across. They didn't show that. So.
Yeah, because that's probably like their one big gimmick for this one, And I think the interesting thing is that this is the first Infinity Ward one now that's also going to have zombies now, because that was usually like a Treyarch thing in the Black Ops versions. But it looks like this one's going to have zombies as well. So I'm a little bit disappointed about that, because I just don't like the zombie stuff. It's just a bit weird, and I could never really get into it.
I never liked it. Yeah. The only time I like zombie games is if the game is a zombie game. Like Dead Island and
that's those kind of games definitely. But this is more like just a horde mode with zombies. But it's super weird. I tried to play a bit of that Black Ops 3 one, and I just couldn't get into it. You got like gumball machines and all these random power ups, and it was like horde mode mixed with like Left 4 Dead and all this sort of stuff, and I don't know, it just didn't gel with me. So I don't know if I'll pick up Infinite Warfare.
Have you looked much at Gears of War 4 that's out today? Did you impressed with what you heard?
Yeah, like I said, I think I mentioned that in one of the previous podcasts. Like, I really want to play that. I love Gears of War, and I really want to play it. And by all accounts, it's really, really good.
The only negative I've seen is that they don't rate the new characters as good as the last.
Yeah, and I think that's why at the start of the game they kind of had to have some of those prologue missions where you kind of go back and play as the old characters, just to sort of give you a little bit of they introduce you to the new characters, but you get to play as the old ones and kind of relive a little bit of that
connection.
Yeah, but that game looks awesome. Apparently just runs like a dream on PC. I saw, because I was eyeing off some graphics cards, and look, you can get a GTX 1060. You can get a GTX 1060 for under $400 now.
Oh, wow. Is that sort of card run Oculus Rift and that? Or?
Well, that game can, a GTX 1060 6 gig version can run Gears of War 4 1080p maxed out at about 80 frames a second.
That's not bad,
apparently, like, it just runs like a dream on PC. So I'm still like keen to pick that up. The only thing I'm worried about with the GTX 1060 is it doesn't have the longevity. I think people, from what I'm reading, people are saying if you get a 1060, you can get it for like, sometimes on special, you can pick one up for like $350, which is
that because no 4K?
Well, I think it's because in DirectX 12, the performance dips. So I think people are saying, like, if you want to play games now or from the last year or so, in 1080p, the GTX 1060 is perfect. Like Rise of the Tomb Raider, everything, you'll get 60 frames on Ultra. But within like the next year or two already, like it might start to suffer a bit.
Yeah.
Whereas the 1070, you'll pay a little bit more, but the 1070 will go strong for years to come. But, you know, the 1070s are still like $700.
Yeah,
if you just really want to play Gears of War 4 now, a GTX 1060 will do the job more than adequately. But, yeah, that game looks awesome. I love Gears of War. Like, see, that's a game where the shooting, it's just so satisfying. Like, it's so precise and just feels so good. The guns feel good, and you know, when you're pumping the enemies full of bullets, like you can just feel that impact. And that the horde mode as well in Gears of War is always a lot of fun as well.
The co-op and
and look, you got the co-op and the big set pieces and the graphics. And I saw some people showing off some screenshots and things of Gears of War 4 running in HDR on the Xbox One S, and it looks really good. I saw some screenshots comparing the normal without HDR and with HDR, and some of the lighting and things just looks sensational. Like that game, I really want to play it. But yeah, look, it's just a huge week looking at all the VR releases. Like you said, there's just everything's flooding. And then plus, like you said, Rise of the Tomb Raider.
I'm so torn about whether to get that like tomorrow almost. Look,
I think it just looks like it was a bad decision to go with the Microsoft exclusivity on that one from Square Enix. Like they hit
good for PlayStation players because they get the anniversary, all the DLC. They know what the game's like.
It always works out like that, doesn't it? That, you know, the people, they pay for the exclusivity. The fans pay top dollar to get that game day one. You waited about a year now. You don't really feel like you've missed anything. Like you weren't missing this mainstream hit that just everybody was talking about for months and months, and now you just come in and pick up the ultimate collection with all the DLC and all the patches and everything.
Plus, like, if there's any online, all the PS4 players are at the same point. Like, it's all new to them. So,
that's right. So, like, I mean, if a game like Overwatch was exclusive, then that would be huge, because by now it's over and you've missed the boat.
Yeah, the rush is gone.
Because that game, everybody was talking about it and playing it months ago. But for a single-player game like that, and by all accounts, the sales were poor.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, Xbox One just doesn't have the units out there. So the sales were poor. And it kind of killed off a little bit of their momentum. Like, after that first Tomb Raider reboot, they got a lot of hype. I think people were really looking forward to the second one.
Yeah. How do you think it'll do on the PS4, like, specifically?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think it looks like a bad move, because now I think people will pick it up, but I think it's been forgotten about a bit.
Yeah.
And they've lost a little bit of that buzz and that momentum. And like I said, you look at the release calendar now and it's just swamped. It's just swamped. Like, you're going up against Battlefield 1 that's got a lot of hype, plus Call of Duty, which always sells like a fair few million. Don't forget, FIFA's just come out. NBA 2K17 just came out. Titanfall 2's coming out on PlayStation for the first time. Final Fantasy 15's going to come out. Last Guardian. Like, they've shot themselves in the foot. Like, I think obviously the money that they would have got from Microsoft for the exclusivity kind of probably made up for it a little bit, but they've kind of had to, right? It would have had to, but by the same token, they've kind of done a little bit of harm to their franchise. Because I remember like a fair bit of excitement around that game when it was sort of coming up to release. And now that it's been a year, I think it's been forgotten about a little bit.
Disappointing to me, because Tomb Raider started on PlayStation, right? Like, that was the
Tomb Raider's an essential sort of PlayStation game.
I viewed it like Metal Gear in a way, like way back.
Well, to be fair, I think I actually played it on PC. I think it was equally on PC and PlayStation. But yeah, it was kind of synonymous with PlayStation. And yeah, like you said, that I think it was almost kind of like you know, Uncharted 4 was gearing up, and Microsoft just thought, well, this is kind of in that style, and we need something like that, so they went for it. But yeah, I think it actually did more harm than good for the Tomb Raider franchise, and I think there's still some people that'll pick it up, and like you said, I'm kind of tempted to as well because I really like the first one, and
I really liked it.
This was better than the first one in every single way.
The whole package is tempting. I find, like, having the DLC, having the extra like co-op modes, and
I always do like getting the complete edition of a game as well. So I just have a feeling like it'll probably drop in price pretty quickly, and I might just hold off a little bit longer. But I think at some point,
I don't know
I'll
if
have
I
to
can.
pick that up. Yeah, look, like I do really like.
Well, you got Mafia, right? So
yeah, I think Mafia. I think I'll breeze through, try and get the platinum, and then hopefully be ready for Final Fantasy 15 when that drops.
November, right? Middle of the month.
Yeah, so I mean, looking at what else is out this week, nothing else huge, I guess. There's another Skylanders game, surprise, surprise.
Is that the one with Crash Bandicoot?
I think it might be Imaginators. Yeah, I think that might be the one.
Everything else came out today, right? No.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all about VR, PlayStation VR this week. We'll see how that goes.
Cool. Well, we'll leave it there unless you got anything else you want to quickly discuss.
No, I think we've pretty much covered everything. It'll be interesting to see once we come back next week, just to get a bit more sort of a update and feedback on PSVR.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I don't think it's going to be a bit of a quiet week for non-VR users, I feel, but we'll try to mix it up a little bit.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and please everyone. But thanks for joining me, Edin.
Thank you.
And we will see everyone next week. Bye-bye.